In Srimad Bhagavatam, the gopis pray, "Of all the devotees, this Govardhana hill is the best. O my friends, this hill supplies Krishna and Balaram, as well as their calves, cows, and cowherd friends, with all kinds of necessities. Water for drinking, very soft grass, caves, fruits, flowers, and vegetables. In this way, the hill offers respect to the Lord. Being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, Govardhana hill appears very jubilant." It was one of Srila Prabhupada's last desires to go on Govardhana Parikrama. Even though his body was practically finished, His Divine Grace asked his disciples to arrange for a bullock cart to take him around this most sacred pastime place of the Lord. And it was only after much pleading from them that Prabhupada agreed not to go. In this way, we can understand that Govardhana hill is very dear to him, as it always has been to the great acharyas in our line. And with this in mind, we have undertaken to make this video presentation on Govardhana Parikrama, the complete circumambulation of the hill on foot. Our idea has been to present the beauty of this sacred hill and explain the different pastimes that took place around it. We pray to Srila Prabhupada that this small effort to please him will be successful.
Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tana Paro Premamritam Banidhi Dhira Dhira Jana Priya Karo Nirma Saro.
Here we see a map of Govardhana Hill. We'll be starting at Radha Kund, the left-hand end on the top side, and then heading along to the right. When we reach the end, we'll come around and go back along the lower side of the hill, finishing again at Radha Kund. It's early in the morning as we arrive on the edge of Radha Kund town. We offer our prostrated obeisances in the holy dust of this sacred place and pray to the Lord to allow our parikrama to be successful. The whole walk is about 23 kilometers, which takes a minimum of 5 hours to complete, although normally we like to take our time and spend the whole day visiting the pastime places around the hill. This is a Krishna-conscious way of having a family outing, taking the time to do Govardhana Parikrama together. This family is doing Dandavat Parikrama, offering obeisances again and again until they cover the whole distance, which takes several days to complete. On the way to our first stop, Kusum Sarovar, we pass the Radhakanta Yugal Swarup Mandir, designed in classic palace architectural style. Then we move on to Kusum Sarovar. Sometimes Govardhana Hill is described as being in the form of a peacock, with Radhakund and Shyamakund as its two eyes. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur prays, with its nearby forest groves and the limitless nectar-trickling flowers in its waters, Kusum Sarovar shines with great splendor. Is it the handsome face of Govardhana Hill, the king of mountains? This lake is known as Kusum Sarovar because of the many blossoming flowers destined to become gopis in the future, that grow in its waters. Simply by once bathing in this Kusum Sarovar, Narada Muni attained a gopi form. Actually, Kusum Sarovar means the lake of flowers, and Srimati Radharani comes here every morning to pick flowers to offer to Krishna when they meet at Radhakund later in the day. Devotees come to visit the shrines above the lake, built as offerings of thanks to Krishna after the Maharaj of nearby Bharatpur defeated the Muslims in battle about 300 years ago. This first shrine is dedicated to the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani. On the ceiling we see paintings of different pastimes of the Lord. Here, Nrsingadev kills Hiranyakashipu. Here, Varaha saves the earth planet. Here we see a spectacular painting of Lord Ram's battle for Lanka, complete with someone looking like Kumbhakarna consuming warriors from both sides. The main shrine is dedicated to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. On the ceiling we find more paintings of the avatars and different pastimes of Radha and Krishna. The simple building at the end is actually a temple for a Balaram Govardhana Shila. The devotees here, who are members of ISKCON, worship him very nicely. At the other end, we go up on the roof and have a view across Govardhana Hill to Uddhavakund, where Uddhava spoke the glories of the Lord to Vajranabh, Lord Krishna's great-grandson, as described in the literature known as Srimad Bhagavatam Mahatmya. Next to it is a Goshala. We'll be visiting this area as we go around the other side of Govardhana Hill. By now you may have noticed that we've not actually seen Govardhana Hill yet. At this point, at the northern end, the hill is completely underground, but as we move further south, it will gradually show itself. Behind and to the left of the shrines at Kusum Sarovar is this temple dedicated to Uddhava and his recitation of Lord Krishna's message to the gopis. Here he offered his prayers to the inhabitants of the holy Dham. He said, "The gopis of Vrindavan have given up the association of their husbands, sons, and other family members who are very difficult to give up, and they've forsaken the path of chastity to take shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, Krishna, which one should search for by Vedic knowledge. Oh, let me be fortunate enough to be one of the bushes, creepers, or herbs in Vrindavan, because the gopis trample them and bless them with the dust of their lotus feet." On the road at the southern end of Kusum Sarovar is the Radha Van Bihari temple. On the altar they have different shilas. Here we see one shila which has been carved to show baby Krishna sucking his toe, lying on a banyan leaf. This Radharani Govardhana Shila is sitting at the lotus feet of a Krishna Shila. In Govinda Lilamrita, there's a story of Radha and Krishna meeting here when Srimati Radharani was picking flowers with her friends. Krishna accused them of being thieves and said he would report them to the great king Cupid. And when the gopis tried to argue with him, he said he couldn't speak to them as he was a strict brahmachari and was not able to discuss anything with women. Finally, as we see in this picture here on the altar, Krishna combed Srimati Radharani's hair in the company of Lalita and Vishaka on the banks of Kusum Sarovar. This temple is run by ISKCON devotees, headed by His Holiness Bhakti Balapuri Maharaj. We come back out to the Parikrama path and move a little further south. If we turn to the left, the path will take us to Narada Kund. Here we find a small ashram on the site where the great sage performed austerities under the instruction of Vrinda Devi to get a suitable form for watching Radha and Krishna's Astakaliya Leelas. After many years of tapasya, she took him to Kusum Sarovar and dipped him in the water there, and he came out in a female form known as Naradi. When the Lord saw Narada in this form, he ordered him to stay here and write the Bhakti Sutras. By again dipping in Kusum Sarovar, Narada regained his male form and remained here to write this great literature. In the temple, we find two deities of Narada. The first one is a new one of him as he travels throughout the spiritual and material worlds, preaching and chanting the holy names. At the back is an older deity, in which he seems to have his sari on as Naradi. Outside, by the side of the Kund, we find an elderly Gaudiya Vaishnava Vanaprastha couple applying their tilak after bathing in the Kund. From here, we move down the Parikrama path to the place where we first see Govardhana Hill lifting its head out of the dust of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Lord Chaitanya came here when he performed his Govardhana Parikrama. Chaitanya Charitamrita describes as follows. From Radha Kund, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Kusum Sarovar. When he saw Govardhana Hill near there, he was overwhelmed with joy. When the Lord saw Govardhana Hill, he immediately offered obeisances, falling down on the ground like a rod. He embraced one piece of rock from Govardhana Hill and became mad. Perhaps these are some of those same Govardhana Shilas that Lord Chaitanya first saw. Turning to the right, near these rocks, we find a path that takes us to beautiful Ratna Kund, the place of the Ratna Singhasan, or throne of jewels. At the entrance, we find one special Govardhana Shila. It is said that one time Krishna was standing on this rock with a cow, and the rock became so ecstatic it melted. Today we can see the impression of the cow's hoofprint still visible on the Shila, and this is said to be the footprint of the Lord himself. Lord Krishna and Srimati Radharani would come here often with their gopi friends, and Krishna would sit Radharani on a jeweled staircase at the edge of the Kund and bathe her feet. Then he would seat her on the Ratna Singhasan and worship her. Srimad Bhagavatam describes the pastime in which Krishna and Balaram were dancing with their gopis near Ratnakund, and one great demon named Shankachuda came and kidnapped the girls. Krishna chased the demon and punched him to his death here on the banks of Ratnakund. From the roof, we see Govardhana Hill just beginning to show his head through the dust of Vraj Mandala. If one comes early in the morning to Ratnakund, one may be fortunate enough to see the famous, mysterious blue cows of Vraja. Actually, they're a type of deer, and their shyness makes sightings of them quite rare. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the gopis pray, "Blessed are all these foolish deer, because they have approached Maharaj Nanda's son, who is gorgeously dressed and is playing on his flute. Indeed, both the doe and the bucks worship the Lord with looks of love and affection." If one walks back down the dirt path, one comes to Gwal Poka, where Krishna and Balaram and the cowherd boys would come every day to let the cows drink. Now it looks quite nice, but previously it was almost in a state of ruin. We return to the main Parikrama path, continuing towards the south. We come to an area which is said to be connected with Lord Ram. While the bridge to Lanka was being built, Hanuman and the monkeys were collecting rocks and mountains to throw into the ocean. They say that Hanuman came here and tried to pick up Govardhana Hill to throw it into the ocean also, but as he tried to lift the hill, a voice came from the sky saying the bridge was finished. Govardhana Hill was disappointed at not being able to serve his Lord. But when Lord Ram was returning to Lanka, he stopped here and told Govardhana that the next time he appeared, he would definitely lift him and engage him in his pastimes. In this way, when the Lord appeared as Krishna, he lifted Govardhana Hill. As we move slowly further down the side of the hill, we find it rising gradually further above the ground and revealing its transcendental beauty more and more. As one moves around Govardhana Hill, one finds different types of sadhus. Generally they're quite friendly, although some of them have habits that are not up to our normal Vaishnav standards. At the crossroads, we take the right-hand fork towards Govardhana town. Devotees often take their final rest at the lotus feet of Govardhana Hill in Pushpa Samadhis. Less than 100 yards past the crossroads, we find the Samadhi of His Grace Tribhuvanath Prabhu, a dedicated disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Now we're entering Govardhana town. The devotees on parikrama keep moving forward, but some of the locals are relaxing in the shade. In Govardhana town, we go first to Manasi Ganga, the Ganges which came from Lord Krishna's mind. When Krishna killed Vatsasura, a demon in the form of a calf, the cowherd boys told him he'd become contaminated and would have to take bath in the Ganges. Not wanting to leave Vrindavan Dham, Lord Krishna manifested the Ganges from his mind here and bathed in it, and the cowherd boys were satisfied again. Srila Jiva Goswami describes Radha and Krishna's boating pastimes on Manasi Ganga. In those days, Manasi Ganga was a major river, and in order to cross, one needed to take a boat. Once, Srimati Radharani and the gopis wanted to cross, so they looked around for a boat and a boatman, but all they could find was a rickety-looking boat with a young, lazy-looking, dark-skinned boatman with a peacock feather in his hair. Needless to say, it was Krishna in disguise, although the gopis couldn't recognize him. The gopis were carrying dairy products on their heads, and the boatman immediately demanded an exorbitant fare for the trip, to be paid in the form of milk, yogurt and ghee. He slowly rowed some way into Manasi Ganga, but then stopped, saying he was tired and hungry and needed to eat some of their dairy products. To their surprise, he consumed a major portion of what they were carrying and then collapsed in the boat, telling the gopis, "That was a big feast. Now I need to take rest for some time." He asked them to massage his arms and legs as he relaxed. But Srimati Radharani told him, "Yes, we'll take your arms and legs and we'll throw you into Manasi Ganga if you don't start rowing again right now." So the boatman reluctantly started rowing again, very slowly. But then a storm came up out of nowhere. The boatman told the gopis, "We're overloaded. You have to throw the rest of your dairy products overboard or we'll sink." After the gopis had done that, the boatman told them, "We're still overloaded. You have to throw all your jewelry overboard." The boat was sinking and rocking from side to side. So Srimati Radharani, in transcendental desperation, threw her arms around the boatman and appealed to him, "Save us, save us." Then, under his chadar, she felt something strange. She lifted his cloth, and what did she see? A flute. In this way, Srimati Radharani realized that this is none other than her beloved Nanda Nandan, Sri Krishna. Then the storm immediately disappeared, and Radha and Krishna and the gopis enjoyed boating pastimes on Manasi Ganga for the rest of the day. On the far side, we see a temple dome. This is the Chakaleshwara Shiva Mandir, and next to it is the Bhajan Kutia of Srila Sanatan Goswami. Let's go and have darshan. Here we see Chakaleshwara Shiva manifested as 5 Shiva Lingas. 500 years ago, Srila Sanatan Goswami was living here, but mosquitoes were bothering him, so he felt he had to leave. Lord Shiva appeared to him in the form of a Brahmin and said he would get rid of the mosquitoes and begged Sanatan not to go. From that day on, there have been no mosquitoes here. This is the Bhajan Kutir of Srila Sanatan Goswami. He stayed here for many years and finally left this world here on the banks of Manasi Ganga. Here one friendly Brahmin chants some mantras to bless us. Back on the other side, we turn up to the left to the Manasi Devi temple. She's Yoga Maya, the presiding deity of the lake, always ready to protect the dam from any nonsense people. Immediately behind the Manasi Devi temple is Brahma Kund. It is made of the waters left after Lord Brahma had bathed the Lord at the end of the Govardhana Leela. If we continue on a little further, we come to the Haridev temple. Haridev is Krishna lifting Govardhana hill, and he is the presiding deity of the western petal of Vraj Mandala. The gopis would wait here to meet Krishna. One time they were waiting and waiting until, in great separation, they called out repeatedly, Haridev, Haridev, until it seemed they would leave their bodies. Then Krishna appeared before them as Haridev, holding Govardhana hill on the little finger of his left hand. Our parikrama takes us through the town, past the different merchants. This is the famous Giriraj sweet shop, well known for its son papri. Then we enter the area known as Dan Gati, or the place of the tax-collecting pastimes. We turn down the parikrama path, first of all passing a small place where there's a Govardhana Shila with the footprint of Srimati Radharani on it.
राधा रानी पोट बताओ भाई देखो ये राधा रानी पोट ये कृष्ण पोट ये फिंगर बच्चों को
At the beginning of Kartik, it's an exceptionally beautiful area, with many creepers with delicate pink flowers embracing the Govardhana Shilas. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami describes in Dan Keli Chintamani that one time a big fire sacrifice was being held at Govinda Kund, further to the south, for the benefit of Krishna and Balaram. So the gopis wanted to take ghee to be offered in the yajna. Carrying their clay pots on their heads, they came from Radha Kund and tried to cross the hill here at Dan Gati. However, before they could go over the hill, they had to pass Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends, who were in a very playful mood. When Krishna first saw Srimati Radharani, he became momentarily bewildered. He asked himself, "Is this a blossoming champak vine? No, champak vines are stationary, and this being moves. Is this a lightning flash? No, lightning shines only for a moment in the sky, and this being remains continually before me. Is this a river with splendid waves? No, for rivers are formless, and this being has a very beautiful form." Then he understood it could only be Vrishabhanu Nandini, Srimati Radharani. Krishna and the cowherd boys stopped the gopis and demanded a fantastic tax, or they wouldn't let them pass. Krishna told Srimati Radharani, "For the red sindoor mark in your parted hair, you must pay the toll of 100,000 glittering crystal stones. And for your beautiful braids, which glisten like black mascara, you must pay the toll of 200,000 charming sapphires. O girl with the beautiful eyebrows, for your forehead, which shines like a golden half moon, you must pay the toll of 100,000 splendid moonstones. And for the tilak markings drawn in musk on your forehead, you must pay the toll of 100 million moon-shaped pendants studded with sapphires. For your bending eyebrows, you must pay the toll of 50,000 quivers studded with sapphires. And for your beautiful ears, you must pay the toll of many bowstrings made of charming new lapis lazuli stones." In this way, Krishna charged an amazing tax for each part of Srimati Radharani's transcendental body, and there was no possibility of her paying, but Krishna would not let the gopis pass till they paid. Then an older gopi, Nandimukhi, came and arranged that the next day the gopis would meet Krishna at a nearby kund at 11 in the morning and settle the tax. When we walk past that kund shortly, we'll stop there and finish the pastime. Our next stop will be the ISKCON temple at Govardhana Hill, Bhaktivedanta Ashram, which was acquired for Srila Prabhupada's movement by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami and his intimate friend Giriraj Swami. The ashram is being run by Keshav Bharati Goswami. We asked him to explain something about the project's background.
In the late 80s, Tamal Krishna Maharaj began a project, commentary on the Brahma Samhita. And in doing that, the project expanded into many details about Braj. And in doing that, he started to visit places and do parikramas. And he hadn't done very many of those earlier in his Krishna conscious career. So then he was doing a parikrama with Giriraj Maharaj and some other devotees, and he saw this place and was attracted. They found out, who owned the property. It was owned by a small king in Madhya Pradesh called, I think his name was Vishwambar. So through the efforts of Mahamantra in Delhi and Mahaprabhu, lawyer in Bombay, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, negotiated and finally ended up acquiring this property. We can see in our movement that, due to the nature of our movement, it is a preaching movement, it caters to the masses, and therefore we have to collect large amounts of funds in order to build large temples and spread Krishna consciousness in a very expensive way, which was Srila Prabhupada's mission. But we have seen over the years that the leading preachers in our movement, sometimes because they have such a heavy workload, and what they need also is to cultivate their Krishna consciousness individually, internally, they need to develop in order to be able to give the deeper Krishna consciousness that people actually need. So we thought it would be a good idea to have a place that it would be a little different than the other ISKCON centers. This place, ISKCON Bhaktivedanta Ashram, I call it Sadhana Ashram, but anyway, the official name is ISKCON Bhaktivedanta Ashram, is a place, it's a monastery. It's the only monastery in our movement, as far as I know. Maybe there are others, but anyway, to my knowledge. So it is meant for the male members of our society to stay. The female members of our society are also welcome to come here, to come for parikrama and different festivals, attend and take advantage of the spiritual atmosphere. But the main purpose of the place is to provide a place for especially the senior male leaders of our movement, the sannyasis and gurus and grihastha men who have taken on large responsibilities, a place for them to come and live without the pressure and without the touching of the energies that they have to touch in order to expansively spread Krishna consciousness for deeper sangha and for more contemplative appreciation and that side of Krishna consciousness, which Prabhupada always encouraged us to do. I mean, I was with Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan when he used to tell us what he wanted us to do regularly, yearly. Come to India, hear and chant, learn about the pastimes of Krishna, do serious sadhana. And so we offered this to Krishna Maharaj, Giriraj Maharaj, especially myself as their partner. We designed this place so that it's fit for any serious sadhaka to come and live in the association of senior men and cultivate Krishna consciousness in a very profound way. Now we started living here in 1994, that's 9 years. The numbers of people who come to Govardhana to go around on parikrama, not just from our movement or from other places in the West, but in India, the numbers of people who come here has increased astronomically. And if you ask some of the older residents who have been here residing on the parikrama path, who have these little temples with these little deities and kind of earn their livelihood or are supported by the pilgrims who come around and they maintain these deities, when you ask them, why has it increased so much over the last 10 years? They'll say, it is your Prabhupada. And it is you Western devotees, because of your preaching and because of your festivals and because of your programs, you're responsible for the tremendous increase in the numbers of pilgrims and the numbers of parikrama people, the people that come to do parikrama.
This is the Pushpa Samadhi of Tamal Krishna Goswami, well known as one of Srila Prabhupada's most dedicated disciples. We set off again and walk to Danavartan Kund. As we explained before, when Krishna tried to charge Srimati Radharani that huge tax, it was agreed they would meet at 11 the next morning by this kund and settle the tax. However, the gopis came at 10 and hid behind the trees, and when Krishna and the cowherd boys came, the girls ambushed them and tied them to the trees by their seekers. The gopis hit the cowherd boys, till they cried for mercy. And then Srimati Radharani told Krishna, "We'll let you go, but first you let us off that tax." Krishna immediately agreed, and the cowherd boys were released. From that day, this Kund has been known as Dan Nivartan Kund, the Kund where the tax was nullified. We walk on and take the inner path, which takes us closer to the hill. Along its side, we find many Kadamba trees, recognizable by their characteristic leaves and seed pods. We read that previously the hill was very high, but now, as we see here, it's only about 50 or 60 feet above the surrounding ground level. In Lalita Madhava, Srila Rupa Goswami describes how this happened. When Lord Krishna left Vrindavan, Srimati Radharani was thrown into a bottomless ocean of separation and searched all of Vraj Mandala for him. The last place she looked was Govardhana Hill. Seeing Radha's intense suffering in separation from Krishna, the Manasi Ganga completely dried up, and Govardhana Hill, which was so tall that the sun god's horses would stop every day to eat the grass at its summit, shrunk to the height of 100 arms. This is the area that the Govardhana Puja took place in. Srimad Bhagavatam describes how Krishna challenged his father Nanda Maharaj as to the value of the annual Indra Puja. He told his father, "We're not dependent on Indra. We're actually dependent on the cows as they sustain us, and on Govardhana Hill as it sustains the cows. And we're also dependent on the Brahmins who direct us in our lives. So instead of worshipping this Indra, we should worship them." Convinced by his young son's words, Nanda Maharaj announced to everyone, "Let the worship of Govardhana Hill begin." Krishna then told the inhabitants of Vrindavan, "Prepare very nice foods of all descriptions from the grains and ghee collected for the yajna. Prepare rice, dal, then halava, pakora, puri, and all kinds of milk preparations, like sweet rice, rabri, sweet balls, sandesh, rasgulla, and laddu." So, from Dangati to this point here, about 5 kilometers, and extending out from the hill for 1 kilometer, there were piles of sabjis, samosas, pakoras, chutneys, dal and rice of thousands of different varieties. Along the side of the hill in the hollows, there were lakes of sweet rice, condensed milk, and nectar drinks. Still to this day, on the occasion of Govardhana Puja, temples prepare thousands of preparations to offer to Krishna. Then Krishna manifested a gigantic form and stood on top of Govardhana Hill in front of them. Srila Prabhupada explains, when everything was complete, Krishna assumed a great transcendental form and declared to the inhabitants of Vrindavan that he was himself Govardhana Hill, in order to convince the devotees that Govardhana Hill and Krishna are identical. Then Krishna began to eat all the food offered there. The form of Krishna who began to eat the offerings was separately constituted, and Krishna himself, along with the other inhabitants of Vrindavan, offered obeisances to the deity as well as Govardhana Hill. In an instant, that gigantic form of the Lord on top of the hill consumed everything the Brijbasis had offered. Then, to their amazement, he called out, "Aniyor, Aniyor, Aniyor! Give me more food! Give me more! Give me more!" Everyone rushed home and collected whatever grains and foodstuffs were remaining there, and in no time assembled another huge offering for Govardhana. However, again, in seconds, he consumed everything, and again he called out, "Aniyor, Aniyor! Give me more food! Give me more!" However, now the inhabitants of Vrindavan had no more left. Nanda Maharaj was in anxiety. They had abandoned the Indra Puja, so that was a complete failure. And now it seemed the Govardhana Puja had also failed. What were they to do? But Lord Balaram, the crest jewel of the intelligent, then took one small tulsi leaf, climbed Govardhana Hill, and presented it to that gigantic form of the Lord. Govardhana took it and was completely satisfied. There were no more cries of Aniyor. Srila Prabhupada writes, "The identity of Krishna in Govardhana Hill is still honored, and great devotees take rocks from Govardhana Hill and worship them exactly as they worship the deity of Krishna in the temples." The followers of the Krishna consciousness movement may therefore collect small rocks or pebbles from Govardhana Hill and worship them at home, because this worship is as good as deity worship. Now everyone was completely happy, and the Brijbasis did Govardhana Parikrama together, keeping the cows in front of them. Unfortunately, though, there was one person who was not happy at all, and that was Lord Indra. Shortly, when we reach Govindakund, we'll explain what happened next. As we continue on the Parikrama path, we pass through the small town which is named Aniyor after this great pastime. At the end of it we turn right, and then shortly afterwards we turn left to go to the temple of Lord Balaram. The larger deity is Balaram, and the smaller one is Krishna. It is said that they are original 5,000-year-old deities. If we continue up the hill and turn left at the end, we come to this gate which takes us to the place where Madhavendra Puri found the deity Gopal, as described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's a very pleasant garden area set right at the foot of Govardhana Hill, and it's just suitable for a quiet picnic. In the temple, we're told that Madhavendra Puri found Gopal leaning against the rock at the back, with his foot on the Shila in the front. It is said that the marking at the top left is the impression of the Lord's foot, and the mark at the top right is from the hoofprint of a cow. We walk on past Sankarshan Kund. It is said that the Balaram deity was hidden in the waters here for many years during the rule of the Muslims. Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us that Madhavendra Puri installed Gopal on top of the hill near here. Perhaps that was near this old temple, or maybe where the new temple is. We know that Lord Chaitanya would not step on Govardhana. So even though people from other sampradayas do so, we don't, and therefore we don't visit these temples. We walk on past the Kund and then turn right through these gates. They take us into another garden area, and when we go through the gates at the end, we turn left. Now we're approaching Govinda Kund. On the way, we encounter this band of cheerful pilgrims. Now we're on the banks of Govinda Kund. On the side we see where Madhavendra Puri was sitting when he dreamt of Gopal and was instructed to take him out of the jungle at the place we saw earlier. After the Govardhana Puja, Lord Indra sent the terrible Samvartika storm clouds, which inundate the universe at the time of devastation. Rain was falling in pillars. There were hailstones the size of elephants and howling winds. All the Brijbasis were thrown into a great ocean of anxiety, and they immediately took shelter of Krishna, calling out, "Krishna, Krishna, O most fortunate one, please deliver the cows from the wrath of Indra. O Lord, you are so affectionate to your devotees. Please save us also." Krishna then lifted Govardhana hill on the little finger of his left hand and held it there for 7 days and nights, sheltering all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, both man and animal. During that time, the Brijbasis sustained themselves by simply looking at Krishna and drinking his beauty with their eyes. Krishna was watching them and drinking their love. Sometimes they became perplexed and wondered how such a young boy could hold such a big hill on his own. The cowherd men then thought that they'd hold it with their sticks. But then Krishna let some of the weight shift in their direction. As the hill seemed to be coming on their heads to crush them, they called out, "Krishna, Krishna, help!" And Krishna took the weight back on his side. All of the younger gopis were observing Krishna's wonderful achievement, and Krishna was also smiling at seeing the gopis. As he glanced over their beautiful bodies, his hand began to shake, and upon seeing his hand shake, all of the cowherd men underneath the hill became a little disturbed. Then there was a tumultuous roaring sound, and they all began to pray to Krishna for safety. At this time, Lord Balaram was smiling, thinking that these cowherd men had been frightened by the shaking of Govardhana hill. But, seeing Balaram smile, Krishna thought that Balaram had understood his mind in observing the bodies of the gopis, and he immediately became bashful. After 7 days, Indra called off the storm clouds, and the skies became clear again. All the Brijbasis came out, and Lord Krishna replaced Govardhana hill as before. Indra came there to beg forgiveness from the Lord, performing a great abhishek in the company of all the demigods, great sages, personified oceans, holy rivers, and kunds. Everyone who was important in the whole universe was there. The Charanamrita from that abhishek filled this area and became the waters of Govinda Kund. During that abhishek, the Surabhi cow approached Krishna on behalf of all the cows. In Srimad Bhagavatam, she tells the Lord, O Krishna, Krishna, greatest of mystics, O soul and origin of the universe, you are the master of the world, and by your grace, O infallible Lord, we cows have you as our master. You are our worshipable deity. Therefore, O Lord of the universe, for the benefit of the cows, the Brahmins, the demigods, and all other saintly persons, please become our Indra. Having thus appealed to Lord Krishna, Mother Surabhi performed his bathing ceremony with her own milk, and then gave him the name Govinda. As we move on past Govinda Kund, we come to a part of Govardhana Hill that is particularly beautiful. The trees sometimes hang over the Shilas, protecting them from the sun. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the gopis pray, of all the devotees, this Govardhana Hill is the best. O my friends, this hill supplies Krishna and Balaram, as well as their calves, cows, and cowherd friends, with all kinds of necessities. Water for drinking, very soft grass, caves, fruits, flowers, and vegetables. In this way, the hill offers respect to the Lord. Being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, Govardhana Hill appears very jubilant. Govardhana is always joyful in his service to Krishna. When he was sheltering the inhabitants of Vrindavan from the storm, he had to tolerate the rain, hail, and thunderbolts of Indra, but he remained jubilant through being touched by Krishna's hand. When Krishna and Balaram would walk on Govardhana, he would melt in ecstatic love, and his stones would become soft like butter, giving pleasure to the feet of the Lord. Govardhana would create natural thrones where Krishna would sit and enjoy pastimes. As we proceed south, we come across this temple of Lord Balaram. Here he's known as Doka Dauji, the older brother who's watching. Balaram was watching Krishna's spring rasa dance from the top of the hill here, and he became so ecstatic that his crown fell off and landed on this rock, which then melted in joy. Even today, we can still see the impression of Balaram's crown in it, and so it is known as the Mukut Shila, or the Shila of the crown. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami prays, O Govardhana, the young divine couple, Sri Sri Radha Krishna, play splendid, wild, loving games in your every cave. So I've become very eager to see them there. Please allow me to live close by you. O Govardhana, in topmost joy, Krishna plays together with Balaram and the cowherd boys in your incomparable jeweled pavilions and thrones, in the hollows of your trees, and in your caves and valleys. Please allow me to live close by you. O Govardhana, King of mountains, because the nectar of your name as Hari's best servant emanated from Srimati Radharani's pearl-like mouth, which was revealed by Vedic scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam. You are called the new Tilak of Vraja. Please allow me to live close by you. O Govardhana, you are the witness of Radha and Krishna's tax game, which is an ocean of mellows. You increase the joy of the mellows of the devotees with your display of bluish platforms that are full of splendor and fragrance. please allow me to live close by you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Now we're coming to the southern end of Govardhana Hill, where the hill dives deep down again into the dust of Vrindavan.
Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
This area is known as Punchari, or the tail of the peacock, and here we find a temple of Lord Nrsingadev, who is here to protect the devotees as they do parikrama. The pujari gives us special darshan of Lord Nrsingadev killing Hiranyakashipu.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
From the temple, we get nice views down the side of the hill, and we see some of the local devotees at their daily activities. This little owl has just come back from a busy night on the hill. These parrots are enjoying the early morning sun, and these monkeys are up to their usual monkey business. We come across a parikrama party from the Nimbaka Sampradaya. Hundreds of them come through and assemble by Naval Kund and Apsara Kund. Then we go down to Naval Kund, named after Krishna, who's always ever fresh. First we go into this pleasant kunj to get a little rest from the hot sun. Radha and Krishna enjoy transcendental pastimes in places like this. During the spring rasa dance, it is said that Radha and Krishna were dancing in such ecstasy that their bodies melted, and Srimati Radharani's body became the waters of Apsara Kund, and Lord Krishna's body became the waters of Naval Kund. Others say that during the great Abhishek at Govinda Kund, the waters poured on Krishna by the heavenly Apsaras formed this Kund. Just a little away from the Parikrama path, we find this temple of Lota Baba, one of Krishna's cowherd boyfriends, who's been waiting for the Lord to return to Vrindavan for the last 5,000 years. Now we start moving up the western side, towards the northern end of the hill. Our first stop will be at Rasastali, where Krishna begins his spring rasa dance. Here we see some old Kadamba trees. Actually, this area used to be filled with these trees, but now there are only a few remaining. In the main temple, we find a deity of Krishna as Gopal, or Srinathji, the lifter of Govardhana Hill. Behind the temple, inside the small house, is the cave known as Manikandali, in which Radha and Krishna performed many pastimes. Later, one of Lord Chaitanya's intimate associates, Raghava Goswami, lived in the cave for many years, relishing the pastimes that happened here. It is said that his body was always grey from rolling in the dust of Vrajamandala. He is described as being Champak Lata in Krishna Leela. Outside, we see we're very close to Govardhana Hill. The slope is not as steep as on the eastern side, giving everything a more gentle appearance. We'll walk up by the edge of the hill on our way to Kadambavan. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur prays, "The rocks of Govardhana Hill are many kinds of splendid jewels that provide thrones, couches, and other kinds of furniture for Sri Krishna, the supreme monarch of all nectar melons." Govardhana Hill's beautiful forests and caves are Krishna's nectar pastime palaces, each one perfect for the supreme good fortune of his beloved and her friends. There is a pleasant grove of sandalwood trees on Govardhana Hill. Although snakes generally flock to sandalwood trees, no snakes ever come here. Or, if sometimes a snake may come, it is not poisonous. Or if sometimes a poisonous snake may come, its poison is automatically counteracted and it can do no harm. As the best servant of Lord Hari, Govardhana Hill has made this wonderful arrangement for the Lord's pleasure. In the evenings, the grey monkeys gather for their own types of pastimes. Foolish though they may seem, they're all special souls who've somehow earned the right to take birth in this amazing transcendental place. One can see how Krishna must have had great fun with them in his pastimes. We're now moving through the beginning of Kadambavan, which was previously a forest of sacred Kadamba trees. We come across a group of langur monkeys, also known as Hanuman monkeys, as Hanuman, the great associate of Lord Ramachandra, is said to be a member of the same breed. In Gopal Champu, Srila Jiva Goswami describes that on the Ekadasi following the Govardhana Puja, Lord Indra realized he'd made a terrible mistake by attacking Lord Krishna and Sri Vrindavan Dham, and so he approached Lord Brahma, who he knew had recently offended Krishna, for advice on what to do when one commits such an offense. Lord Brahma said, "Yes, I offended the Lord, but not like you did. I don't know what to advise you." Indra became forlorn, and then Brahma had the idea that he could approach Krishna with the Surabhi cow in front of him, as the Lord is always fond of cows. When Indra came from the heavenly planets, he first landed here, and sure enough, there was Krishna. Indra offered dandavats and cried tears on the lotus feet of Krishna, begging for mercy. But Krishna paid no attention to him and simply walked away to the north. Those tears of Indra filled this kund, which is now known as Indra Kund. We're now looking into Kadambavan, towards Surabhi Kund, which is ahead on the left. The Surabhi cow from the heavenly planets landed at Surabhi Kund, and here Indra finally approached Krishna with her in front of him. Surabhi appealed to the Lord to forgive Indra, and by her mercy the Lord became inspired to excuse him. In this way, we can understand that this Surabhi Kund is very special. Surabhi is still residing here, and offenders who come here and chant and pray to her can get special mercy for dealing with their offenses. After this, Indra and Surabhi took the Lord to the other side of the hill and performed the Abhishek there. Now we're in the heart of Kadambavan. It is said that if one rolls in the dust here, one will achieve love of God very easily. There are many nice Shilas here. Some of them have formed intimate relationships with some of the trees. As we come out the other side of Kadambavan, we find Airavata Kund, where Airavata, Indra's elephant carrier, landed when he came for the Abhishek. Unfortunately now it's in a state of disrepair. Back by the main Parikrama path, we begin to approach the town of Jatipur, which is associated with Vallabhacharya and his Pusti Marg. Here people bathe Govardhana hill with milk. Coming out on the other side of the town, we find the path running some distance away from the hill, which makes the parikrama a little more austere. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami prays to Govardhana Hill. May Govardhana Hill, which by Krishna's mercy became the king of all mountains, and received the respectful tribute of its arch-enemy Indra, fulfill my desire. As it was held above the earth, it became so filled with happiness by experiencing the softness of its beloved Krishna's lotus hand. It did not even know it was being struck by Indra's thunderbolts. May Govardhana Hill fulfill my desire. Without taking shelter of the feet of the hill that is the best of Lord Hari's servants, and full of love for the divine King and Queen, how is it possible to attain pure devotional service? May Govardhana Hill fulfill my desire. Now we're entering the town of Govardhana again, but this time from the other side of the hill. We pass through and begin the final leg of our parikrama. Along the path, we find a number of temples of demigods. Here, Hanuman sorts out one rascal demon. Some distance to the right, we can see that Govardhana Hill is again becoming smaller and smaller. We decide to go in again, right next to the hill, to see it as it sinks back into the dust of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Generally, no one comes to this part of the hill, but here we find some very nice, quiet, secluded places where one can peacefully chant Hare Krishna and watch the hill gradually recede back into the dust. Our next stop is Uddhava. At this point, we're directly behind Kusum Sarovar, on the other side of Govardhana Hill. As we approach, we happen to catch a glimpse of another blue cow crossing the field and entering the forest. Here it is said that Uddhava is present in the form of grass, as he prayed in Srimad Bhagavatam. The deity here is said to be one of the original 5,000-year-old deities of Vrindavan, known as Sri Sri Radha Uddhav Bihari. After the disappearance of Lord Krishna, his queens were feeling great separation from him. They remembered how, when the gopis were feeling separation from Krishna, Uddhava came and spoke to them about the Lord, and their separation was alleviated. Now, Uddhava was present near Kusum Sarovar in the form of grass, so they decided to go there and have a great Sankirtan festival and see if Uddhava would appear and speak to them about Krishna. In the company of Krishna's great-grandson, Vajranab, they went and performed Harinam there. At that time, Sri Uddhava appeared before everyone. Uddhava then instructed Vajranab and Lord Krishna's queens in Srimad Bhagavatam for 1 month. And as he spoke, they saw the pastimes happening around them with their own eyes. Then, as the recitation was going on, the queens one by one entered those pastimes and passed away to the supreme abode. A little past Airavattakund, and some distance off the Parikrama path, we find Harju Kund, associated with one of Krishna's cowherd boyfriends. Behind it, further along, is Rudrakund. When Lord Shiva came for the Abhishek, he landed here, and was so overwhelmed in ecstasy that he cried and cried, and his tears formed this kund. As you can see, it's some distance away from the hill. Now we're entering Radha Kund, the final destination of our parikrama. We cross the bridge and look back to where we were in the morning. This shows us that Govardhana hill is very long but very narrow. Radha Kund is the most sacred place in the universe. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur prays, Shama Kund and Radha Kund are two great floods of the nectar of beauty. They are two great oceans of splendor. They are two beautiful roots from which sweet devotional service grows. They are two jewel mines of love. They are two seeds from which grow the jewel vines of transcendental pastimes. How did they become two splendid and nectar-sweet lakes? By seeing these two lakes, Radha and Krishna believe they are present in them. It is as if they directly see each other there. The wise say that by approaching these lakes, one directly approaches Radha and Krishna. Srila Prabhupada discusses, why is Radha Kund so exalted? The lake is so exalted because it belongs to Srimati Radharani, who is the most beloved object of Sri Krishna. Among all the gopis, she is the most beloved. Similarly, her lake, Sri Radha Kund, is also described by great sages as the lake that is as dear to Krishna as Radha herself. Indeed, Krishna's love for Radha Kund and Srimati Radharani is the same in all respects. As we make our way past Radha Kund and around the back of Shama Kund, we see the day slowly coming to a close. Finally, on the edge of the town, we offer our obeisances again in the dust of Vrindavan, in the same place we began in the morning. And we offer our thanks to Srila Prabhupada for having revealed Govardhana hill to us and giving us the opportunity to perform this great parikrama.
Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajananandina Matvaliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghujuga Srideva Gopalaka Krishna Kirtana Gana Natana Param Premamritam Banidhi Sri Chaitanya Kripa